So I bought a lot of Kiss stuff.
Me too.
You bought a lot of Kiss stuff.
Mm.
Have you ever had buyer's remorse after buying something Kiss related?
Yeah, crazy nights.
Okay.
Burn.
Yeah. I did once because I did not buy Crazy Nights. You
Oh
ready for
yeah,
this?
what's that?
Okay. This is in
I have
fact,
those too.
you have these
I
Kiss
do.
Pez
Yeah.
limited edition. Now you know why. And it's hilarious because the Paul looks just like one of the stunt doubles in Phantom of the Park.
I always thought the Paul Pez looked like B. Arthur.
So I have buyer's remorse for buying a Paul Stanley
Yeah.
Pez dispenser. Do you think Paul Stanley has buyer's remorse from anything?
Yeah. Mark St. John. Hey everybody, welcome to episode 30 of Rip and Destroy podcast. I'm TJ, that's Mike.
Hello.
And tonight we're going to talk about everybody's friend Mark St. John because you know what? I was thinking about Mark St. John a while back, and it dawned on me that we really don't know much about Mark St. John, and so we thought we'd do a little bit of research and dig up what we can on the late Kiss guitarist who was only there for a minute. But before we do that, do you have anything you would like to bring up, my friend?
Just a couple quick things. And yeah, this is not one of those episodes like it just kind of freestyle. I actually had to do a lot of homework on this one because being a
Hmm.
fan as long as I have, like you said, there's a lot I didn't know about Mark St. John until now. So it'll be fun to kind of do a deep dive on him. But before we get to that, just a quick thank you to everybody who listened to episode 29. We got better than normal response on that one, and I'm really grateful for that. I'm pretty sure it's because of the provocative title. So maybe you'll see a couple more of those in the future. So thank you for that. And one more quick note on this one. I am planning no less than three shocking revelations throughout the course of this program. So stand by for that. And you won't believe number two.
You're supposed to tell them you won't believe number three, so that they hang on for a while.
Oh no,
That's how clickbait works. And God damn it, if we can't rely on clickbait, how do we have any viewers in the first place?
honestly.
The only thing I wanted to mention was that today, as we record this, it is June 28th, 2026. And if you can believe it, today is the 30th anniversary of the Tiger Stadium show that kicked off the reunion tour, June 28th, 1996. Oh my effing God. It's 30 years, dude. What,
30 years. That's
what?
insane.
Yeah. How did that even happen?
I know somebody my age is supposed to say this, but it really does seem like it was just a couple years ago. I think it's
Totally.
because when I saw them on that tour, it's just I can remember every single minute,
Yeah.
every single detail about that show. So 30
Yeah.
years. Wow.
Yeah, man. Yeah. I love watching footage of the Tiger Stadium show too, man. The crowd is just losing their fucking mind. And I remember that feeling. I
Right.
definitely remember that feeling
Yep,
in
yep.
96 seeing that tour. So yeah, it's always fun to revisit that. So yeah, I mean this episode is going to come out a little bit later than the 28th, but it's always a good time to pull that up on YouTube and watch that footage. It's always a good time. So Mark St. John then. That's
Yeah.
uh that's what we got going on tonight. Yeah, like I said, it just kind of dawned on me. We've talked about Vinny. We know about like Vinny's past. We know about everybody's past pretty much in Kiss. What they were doing before Kiss, what they did since Kiss, if they weren't around anymore. But yeah, Mark St. John was just kind of a footnote, kind of an enigma. Everybody knows that he was in the band for about 5 minutes, and he got sick, as it were. He got diagnosed with some arthritic condition, and did a couple of kind of unremarkable things after that, as far as we know. And the next thing you know, he did.
That's the official story, but we'll unpack a couple things. It was not the story I'd anticipated. And Mark St.
Right.
John is really he's not celebrated in Kiss circles. He did a lot of conventions for a
Mhm.
couple of years there, but even in like the history book and everything, it's like you said, he's kind of a footnote. He doesn't pop up very often. He didn't turn up in the montage at during Do You Love Me at the live shows
Right.
or anything like
Right.
that. It was yeah.
Yeah, he's kind of like that guy who played James Bond once, George Lazenby.
Yeah, yeah. Who also went on to bigger and better things because he, of course, was in Never Too Young to Die.
Right, starring our Uncle Gene.
I do believe you referred to him in the past as Papa Stargrove.
He was. He was. He was John Stamos' dad. So
Nice.
yeah. So there you go. Unfortunately, Mark St. John did not achieve such heights in his career. So what actually what I want to start off with is really basically like where he came from, who he is. And that was actually really hard to find.
Hmm.
I had to dig it up and I managed to find an audio interview from 1988 on YouTube where that was the first time, and I've been poking around trying to find stuff all week. And I finally found this interview where he does talk a little bit about his past. And unfortunately, true to form, his past is actually kind of unremarkable as well. He was born in Hollywood, and that's which is kind of weird because Hollywood seems like some place that nobody actually comes from.
Right, right.
I always feel like Hollywood and Las Vegas, like nobody's actually born in Hollywood or Las Vegas. You go there as a young adult to try to to make it big and find yourself, and you wind up just kind of like getting in trouble and getting stuck there. I think I don't feel like anybody's actually born in Hollywood, but
Or
apparently he was actually born in Hollywood.
which when I was looking him up, I know he was born in 1956, but I couldn't find out where he was from. And I was trying to find out because what came up in a lot of the interviews he did after he was in Kiss was that he had trouble relating to them because they were all from New York. I guess that makes more sense now that I see that he's from Hollywood, California.
Right. Yeah, he kind of alluded to that in the interview that I found. But yeah, so anyway, yes, February 7th, 1956, he was born in Hollywood, LA. And like everybody else of that generation, he was influenced by the Beatles. Big surprise. And he
Wah.
womp womp, he picked up the guitar. He picked up the guitar as a hobby until he kind of became serious about it. And his parents apparently were not real supportive of him until he started making, according to him, twice as much money as his dad. So I don't know what his dad did, but apparently it paid half as much as gigging around LA. So because that's pretty much what Mark did was he played around LA what he called the B circuit, and I'm very much paraphrasing from this one interview that I found because like I said that was all I could find. Play the B circuit in various bands until he just kind of worked his way up with experience and kind of made it to some a few more well-known bands. But as far as I know, he pretty much just kind of gigged around LA, wound up in Nashville for a little while, actually playing country and western, which apparently is something that everybody has to go through at one point or another. I think you did, I did, I don't know.
Oh, sure.
Um, kidding, we didn't. But apparently he just kind of got sick of playing clubs. Sick of the club scene, and he started teaching guitar. So he had quite a few students coming to him, and eventually he bought himself a little 4-track recorder, started making some demos, hundreds and hundreds of songs. Apparently, he was in touch with Grover Jackson of Jackson Guitars and Charvel Guitars, and Grover knew, kind of had all the hookups and all the connections, and knew the people to send demo tapes to, and he encouraged him to send a tape to Paul Stanley. Must have been right around the time that they fired Vinny, and they needed to get to work on the Animalize album. So Mark sent in a demo tape to Paul, and according to Mark, Paul wouldn't stop calling him. Like
Hmm.
Paul kept calling him and talking to him for like hours at a time. Like he'd be like, "Yeah, I've got students waiting for me to get on with their lessons or whatever, and I can't get off the phone with Paul Stanley." Oh my God. So this again, this is according to Mark, because one thing that I've noticed in our research, and maybe you did too, is that there are a lot of different accounts of this whole situation. There's, the Paul Stanley version of the story, there's the Mark version of the story, there's the Bruce Kulick version of the story, and there's just the general account. It's like that movie Rashomon, if you're
No.
familiar with any Japanese classic cinema. Rashomon was an Akira Kurosawa movie where this crime happened and like 6 different people witnessed it, but when they're brought in for questioning, they all have a different version of the story. So it's kind of an examination of the nature of truth, which I'm finding is a lot like researching Mark St. John. So,
Yeah. And,
anyways, yeah.
and yeah, I never played music in Nashville, but I did have some really amazing barbecue. So that I highly
Oh,
recommend. It's
there you
kind of
go.
funny because the only band that's listed that I was able to see that he was in prior to Kiss was a band called Front Page, and that was a
Hmm.
cover band. So it
Right.
makes sense. He's on the B circuit, he's playing covers. But one interesting thing about that, and I'm sure we'll tackle this later, is that one of the biggest complaints about Mark St. John is that he couldn't play the same solo twice. And
Hmm.
when they needed him to record guitar solos, he couldn't go back in and punch in a little correction or something because he was just freestyling all the time, which could have something to do with the fact that he also played a lot of jazz, he played piano, he played horns and things like that. But for somebody who can't play the same solo twice to find himself in a cover band, I thought was kind of interesting.
That is interesting. I saw one piece of footage of Front Page on YouTube, and his playing sounds like his playing. He's just
Yeah.
noodling all over the place. I don't know if you saw that one, but he's kind of haywire and he's all over the place. Which is kind of the complaint about him. And it's interesting too because he talks a lot about music theory and hey, having been a guitar teacher and everything. And he kind of complained that when he was brought in for his audition with Kiss, like they did things very simply and they didn't have any kind of like music theory training or language or anything like that. But then you've got Chris Lent, who wrote Kiss and Sell, saying in his book that, Mark had a hard time playing with Kiss because he couldn't stay in time.
Interesting. Well, maybe that's why he started a band with Peter Criss later, because as you know, Peter Criss reads music. He reads music now. So,
Yeah, yeah. Well, apparently he does. Yeah, and for the drummer of a band, I've heard he also has some trouble staying in time. So maybe they hit it off.
wrong is the time, I guess. So,
I guess. So, anyways, yeah, he went out to SIR Studios, auditioned for Kiss. Apparently, they didn't audition anybody else, which was one of my big questions because all of the research that I looked up said, he auditioned for Kiss and they brought him in. But I'm like, who else would they have auditioned that he would have beaten out for that spot?
yeah.
So I apparently he was the only one who they auditioned because they had been talking to him after that demo tape, and they just brought him out to New York just to meet him and see what he could do. And apparently, just because they liked his look or something, I guess they hired him.
Well, I think it kind of continues their failed experiment to find a Yngwie Malmsteen type person to come in and play in what is pretty much a four on the floor meat and potatoes rock and roll band, so
Totally.
it just never worked. It didn't work with Vinny, and it didn't work with Mark St. John either.
No, no. And even though Bruce is something of a shredder like that in that 80s style, I think Bruce was just better at quite honestly, probably just like falling in line and doing his job.
Right?
He knew his bread was buttered, that's for sure.
This is true.
So,
Yeah,
and speaking
because
of that, that's one of the famous stories about Bruce and Mark was that Bruce actually did a couple of solos on Animalize because
yeah,
they were already having trouble with Mark and his attitude and his inability to play the same thing twice. And so apparently Bruce, what I've read is that he played the solos for Lonely as the Hunter
Lonely is the
and Murder
Hunter
in High
and
Heels.
Murder in High Heels. That's correct. Yep.
But I listened to Animalize today and tell me that all the lead work in Thrills in the Night is not Bruce because it sounds a whole lot more like Bruce than it does Mark.
I wouldn't be surprised at all
Yeah,
if
I
he hadn't
wouldn't
played
either.
more on that record. Yep.
Yeah, but we know how it goes as we are wallowing into our 50s and we know how memory gets when things are 40 years old.
It's funny though, if we could just take a minute and talk about the recording of Animalize, because I think it's a fascinating period in the life of the band. Because in 1984, we always talk about how Gene was kind of out of pocket doing other things, but in 1984, he wasn't even there. First of all, Paul and Gene were recording in two separate studios, and Gene wasn't even really recording in his studio. I think most of the bass work on Animalize was Jean from the Plasmatics, and
Mhm.
Mark played on a couple tracks too. I wouldn't be surprised if Bruce did as well. And then you had Paul and Gene in separate studios. For the first 2 weeks that Mark was recording on Animalize, Paul wasn't even there. So he just came in with the engineer and started laying down tracks on top of what they had already recorded, just kind of the scratch tracks. And I guess he had a blast. He was having the time of his life. He's at a huge studio. He's playing whatever he wants and just laying track after track, solo after solo. And it's all well and good until Paul got back, heard them, hated them, erased them all. And
Mm.
that's where it started to get tricky for him. And I think that's when the buyer's remorse started to show up for Paul and then eventually to Gene and certainly with Eric because he had some clashes with Eric Carr too when they were in the studio together.
Yeah, that's a pretty well-known story, I think, is that Eric and Mark were in the studio. I think Mark was playing something, and once he was done, Eric was just like, "Oh, this that one note. I think you got to
Yeah,
fix that note." And apparently, Mark blew up on him, and uh,
yeah,
and Eric said that he left the room so that he didn't kill Mark, and that was when I think Paul and Gene actually were there, and they apparently took Mark aside and tore him a new one, and after that he fell in line somewhat, but you know what, I can't honestly blame Paul and Gene because they had just dealt with that with Vinny. I
right,
mean, they
right.
just dealt with that attitude, and so I'm sure they here comes another one just like him, and they said, "Oh hell no."
Yep. I guess Mark was actually doing a bass track, and
Yeah.
there was one note that worked musically. It wasn't a wrong note, but Eric's thought was it could sound like a wrong note
Mhm.
because it was transitional. And he's like, it might sound better if we just didn't put that in there. And Mark just lost it, started
Mhm.
cussing him out. And if anybody has a bootleg of Paul and Gene chewing him out, I would love to hear. I'd love to hear that. And I'd actually really, really love to see a picture of one of the shows Mark was at because at the end of the show, both he and Bruce came out to do the bow at the end, and I'd love to see a picture of that. I've never seen one.
I think, oh, I think they're out there. I think there actually are a couple of pictures of them floating around online of all five members taking the bow at the end of one of those very few shows that Mark did.
Very cool. Very cool. So one of the things that stood out to me when I was doing my research, because I kind of did a timeline from 1956 to 2007, was how early Mark St. John and Bruce Kulick overlapped. Like
Hmm.
going back to the actual recording, like you said, Lonely as the Hunter and Murder in High Heels were both Bruce, and he probably plays on more as well. And the first tour they did after the record came out was the European tour, and Mark didn't play on that one at all. I think
Right.
he was watching from the sidelines, but Bruce did the whole European tour by himself. And then it wasn't until the American tour that they kind of gave him a trial run. And we can kind of take that show by show if you like, and what happened and who played what. But
All those shows? I don't know if
all
we
those
can cover
shows.
all that in this episode.
This is Mark St. John part one, of course. Okay, so show number one was November 27th, Baltimore, 1984. And from what I saw, it looks like Mark came out and did five songs in the middle of the set. Bruce opened and closed it, and Mark came in the middle. Is that what you found?
Yes, that's true. He came in for Under the Gun and the next several songs, and then that was one of the shows where all five members bowed at the end. Yep. So that was Mark's first actual show with Kiss.
Very cool. And then the night after, November 28th, Poughkeepsie, New York. We're all familiar with this one, of course. This is the Off the Soundboard show. And
Yep.
that's the first time that he played the whole entire show. And
Yep.
that was 50% of the times he played the whole entire show.
All by himself. He did it all by
Way to go.
himself.
So,
Good job, buddy.
so tell me what your thoughts. Listening to the whole show, cover to cover,
Yeah.
Mark's on guitar, it's really, really different. The way he approaches the songs. So especially as a guitar player, what are your thoughts listening to Off the Soundboard?
So you know what I think is really interesting, because of the timeline, because of Animalize, and that tour, I feel like we tend to lump Mark St. John in with Bruce Kulick, like stylistically and era-wise, but really, I think Mark's playing is a lot closer to Vinnie Vincent's. It's so out of control and haywire, and as we've already well established, he doesn't play the same thing twice. He doesn't a lot of what Paul always said is that there's not really wasn't any real structure to it. I did listen to Poughkeepsie and I took note kind of what he was doing with solos, especially on the classic songs. So if you listen to Love Gun, his solo is it's just all over the place. It's a mess. It has nothing to do with the way Love Gun should sound. And Love Gun has a very classic Ace solo, like many of Ace solos, one that you can kind of hum along with. It's got its own little melody, right? And it's pretty classic solo. And Mark literally just noodles all over it, and it doesn't have anything to do with Love Gun, to be quite honest. Once they get to like say Rock and Roll All Night, he does rein it in a little bit and does a little more something that sounds more like the classic solo, but still has his own.
Didn't Gene call it the Angry Bee on the home video?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. When he was complaining about those kind of 80s guitar players, yeah,
Yeah.
when he's talking about, a million notes a minute. Yeah. Uh we've all seen Extreme Close Up. So is in that regard, the Rock and Roll All Night solo was okay, but yeah, honestly, it wasn't. He's not very enjoyable to listen to. Even as much as I can find enjoyment listening to Vinnie Vincent and his brand of off the wall nonsense. Yeah, I don't find Mark just real all that interesting to listen to.
I think the whole record, honestly, is more of a curiosity. I
Yes,
listened to it because I wanted to hear what it sounded like, and I listened to it and I realized I probably wouldn't revisit it very often.
right.
I
No.
did for this to
Yes.
do a little research, but otherwise, it's not something I go back to very often.
No.
Okay, so after Poughkeepsie, November 29th was his last full show in Binghamton, New York. And then December 7th, he got the pink slip in Fort Wayne, Indiana.
Yeah. So timeline wise, apparently, his arthritis, got better to the point where he could play those three shows. But then they just, said fuck it anyways.
But here's the thing. I don't know if you came across this. And speaking of timelines, the very next day on December 8th, they announced that Bruce Kulick was the new lead
Mhm.
guitar player. But one of the things I came across, especially from some quotes from both Mark and Eric, was that the arthritis story was BS. That there may have been
Um,
something, but it didn't keep him out of the shows and it didn't kick him out of the band. It was
well,
all attitude.
I mean, I think that's a half truth. I think definitely, obviously, the arthritis was an issue because it kept him out of off the first leg of the tour. But yeah, he said, yeah, I think the quote that you're referring to was from an interview where he said the arthritis thing was a cover story for, the other stuff, which
Right,
I'm guessing he just meant, yeah, they didn't like him. He didn't work out. But we also know that these issues probably started way back, during the recording of Animalize, because when Bruce came in to record his tracks, Paul said, "Don't cut your hair."
right, exactly. That's where the buyer's remorse came in.
Right.
And yeah, and it may be true, may not be true, but it is shocking revelation number one that arthritis may not have been the issue. But one thing I was thinking of when I was thinking of Mark St. John standing on the side of the stage watching Bruce play the shows, I thought of the story about Eric Carr when he went to one of Paul's solo shows in 1989. And of course, Eric Singer played drums on that tour. And the story goes that Eric was on side of the stage watching the show and he said, "That guy's going to replace me." And ooh. So I wonder if Mark kind of knew in the moment that yeah, this ain't gonna last.
He had to have, especially missing all of the Europe tour,
Right.
you know, because I think the I mean, he did miss the Europe tour due to his condition. But
Yeah.
then, once he finally was able to play shows, he did three shows and like, mm.
Hmm. So that's all I got about his tenure in Kiss. Got anything
That's pretty
more?
much, no, that's pretty much it. Other than that, he did some Kiss expos after the fact and answered some questions. But then we're moving on to his next project, which is White Tiger. What do
Yeah,
you know about those guys?
1985, White Tiger. He starts a band with his brother on bass and Dave Donato on vocals. I got a lot to say about this. Nothing good. It's, we always talk about how we give. This is one time where it actually felt like we may be giving too much. As I was working my way through the White Tiger record, I'm like, and it's honestly, it's not because I don't like this genre. A lot of people would
Right.
dismiss it just because it's butt rock or it's glam or whatever.
Yep.
But I honestly believe some great music came out of that era. I think Janie Lane was a fantastic songwriter. So I'm not just going to write it off because of that. I'm going to write it off because it's really, really bad. White Tiger is horrible. I'm listening to it and I'm thinking like it reminds me of okay, just hypothetically, say there was a movie in 1985 that had both Coreys. And for whatever reason, they get chased through the nightclub, right? White Tiger is the band that would be on stage. I kid you not. And it reminded me so much of this YMCA Battle of the Bands that I went to in like 1985, 86 when the high school kids were playing glam. It's just that bad. It's really, really awful.
Okay, so that's great. Um, First off, I think any movie that could afford both the Coreys in 1985 probably could afford a better band than White Tiger. So this is they would be more in like a Roger Corman production maybe. But so I listened to okay, I didn't make my way through the whole album. I made my way through as much as I felt I needed to
Same.
because here's the thing, I didn't think it was bad. I thought it was completely unremarkable. Like it wasn't bad, it wasn't poorly executed. The songs weren't hard to listen to. I just completely forgot about them 10 seconds after they were over. And that includes Mark's playing. I
Yeah.
mean, it was just more of the same, just oodles and oodles.
Yep. And the for me the vocals are really awful, but yeah, the playing and we'll see later as we skip ahead in the timeline that he is capable of making some great music. But this
Sure.
was not it. This wasn't
No,
it.
no, no. Yeah, like I said, it's just, and I believe that was an independent release. I don't think it was on any kind of a major label. I don't even know what label it was on, because I didn't look it up on Discogs. I believe they sold around 50,000 copies. So it didn't really make a huge dent. And then as they were working on demos for a second record, they broke up.
Kind of keeping with the trend, it's on brand for Mark St.
Yeah,
John, who
I
did
was just
one
gonna say that.
one Kiss record, one video, one tour, but not really, and then one White Tiger record, one and
Yep,
done.
yep, yep.
And then in 1988, he was doing some demos. He was working with some really interesting people. He did one show that was kind of a big collective where he played with Rudy Sarzo and Tommy Aldridge, which is
Hmm.
amazing. He did some work with Jeff Scott Soto, who's a fantastic singer to this day. Everywhere he pops up, he sounds great. He did some stuff with Journey. I love the stuff that he did with the early Yngwie Malmsteen records, the first two.
Hmm.
Ken Tamplin and David Hasselhoff. Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
I'm
We
just gonna hand you the mic, sir. What do you got?
ah okay, so yeah, we cannot have this episode without talking about, surprise, surprise, David fucking Hasselhoff. Okay, the Hoff himself, huge in Germany, Knight Rider himself, Michael Knight. So yes, as we know, David Hasselhoff does have a musical career. Mostly, apparently, he's very popular in Germany, as we all know. And yeah, Mark St. John did some work with the Hoff. He recorded some leads and I don't know how many songs or how many albums or whatever, but there is a video out there for a song called "Is Everybody Happy?" And I don't know how happy everybody is after watching that video, but you kind of owe it to yourself. Look, okay, I'm going to put it this way. You don't owe it to yourself, but if we had to watch it, you do too, goddammit. So you guys go out there and watch this damn video because it's bad. You think White Tiger is bad. This video is bad, bad. And I've got respect for the Hoff. I actually like the guy. But man, I grew up on Knight Rider. That's
Mhm.
cool. But this video is so, oh God, none of it makes sense. None of it goes together. It starts off with like crotch shots and like the Hoff like thrusting, right? With
Oh
like
yeah, yeah, yeah.
with his big silver belt buckle. And and then there's it's a very poppy song. And then there's his hot 80s backup singer girls wearing nothing but bras and giant hair because that's like what you could get away with back in the 80s. And then it cuts to him and like a 9-year-old girl like singing the song with him. And like this is incongruent. That's a big word like gymnasium. And then eventually, as they pan out to some wide shots of the stage where this band is supposedly playing, and there's some fans. There's our boy. There's Mark St. John playing guitar, and he even gets a solo,
Mhm.
which sounds like a Mark St. John solo. But even in the video, we can throw up some screenshots because I took some. And there's Mark in the background doing his overhand thing on the
Yep.
guitar, like he does, his one trick that he does in the Heavens on Fire video. And I'm thinking, like, okay, you pulled that off in the one other video you've been in. Don't do the same trick
Well, that's how we
in the
got the
next video.
arthritis.
Just,
Telling you.
there you go. There you go. And then, but my favorite part about the video is the bass player. Like, there's some close-up shots of this bass player, which we will also throw up right now. And I don't think he knows what video he's in. He thinks he's playing in Venom or something because I he is not he is not making he is making heavy metal faces in a pop music video, and it's hilarious, man.
I mean, leave
He's
it to the Hoff to appeal to every different demographic
I
within the same
guess
3 minutes and 30 seconds.
right, yeah. So, anyways, yes, is everybody happy? No, 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 I'm not
I,
me,
I,
anyways.
I just, and you did make me watch it, and thank you for that. And you told me to watch it in one sitting, and I did not. But I did make it through it. And I think it's hilarious that when you first see Mark, he's on stage, he's rocking out at a point in the song where there is no guitar. It's
Right,
just keyboard.
yeah,
And if you're a
and
drummer,
he's doing chords on the he's playing that guitar, but there's see, I'm kind of convinced that he and the bass player thought they were playing a different song.
love it. And if you're a drummer, I apologize in advance because the first minute or so, I have no idea what's happening with that pre-programmed Casio keyboard beat that they're
Right.
trying to pull. It's
Well, it's
rough.
because you're paying attention to the belt buckle thrusting.
Yeah, right. Which is almost would have been on time had the drummer been on time.
It's got everything wrong with it.
Uh, right on. Well, that's 1988.
Here's the thing about it, though. I actually have to say that the Hoff video is probably the most entertaining part of Mark's career. Out of
I
everything that we're talking about, that's probably the most entertaining thing. that we're
It's the
that
most
we're going to
colorful.
discuss.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Speaking of 1988, what was your favorite record in 1988? What were you listening to?
Let's see. 88, I was probably on Justice for All.
For me, it was Keeper of the Seven Keys Part 2 by Halloween. I would listen to
Nice.
it over and over and over again.
That's
Love
a
that
good one.
record. Okay.
Yeah.
1990, there's a band called Keep, and it's Mark St. John and Peter Criss. And
Hmm.
they played all of one show. It was at a Guitar Center, and they kept the same singer from White Tiger, Dave Donato. And it didn't last very long, like most things, Mark St. John. And apparently, he had a big falling out with Peter Criss.
Mm,
He left the band, and the band then became Criss.
right. I don't know if it was at a Guitar Center. I think it was at a guitar clinic somewhere.
Okay.
But I mean, whatever. It was Peter, Chris, and Mark St. John in 1989 or 88. I mean, yeah, if it's Guitar Center, I wouldn't blame them for booking that place. But yeah, imagine that. Yeah, Mark St. John and Peter Chris had a falling out. Who would have thought?
And did you listen to any of the stuff they did together?
I didn't get to that one. No.
Yeah, not great, not great.
No.
And if you read Peter Criss's book, he talks about this era. He talks about Mark St. John, and he talks about some things that I don't want to talk about. So we're just going to skip over that. And
Oh,
if you're curious, you can go back and read it. But some
okie doke.
accusations, not good,
Okay.
not good.
Alrighty.
So shocking revelation number two in this episode is that Mark St. John pissed off Eric Carr and Peter Criss,
Wow.
right?
Man, it's a good thing you never met Eric Singer.
This is true. This is true.
Could have got the hat trick
And
or the
that
cat trick. Yes.
love it.
That one's free, kids.
Well, one of the things that factored into his arguments with Peter Criss was Peter could afford to send out demos and take his time. Mark couldn't. He had to work,
Mhm.
he had bills to pay, and Keep wasn't paying the bills. So he left, and it's not until 1999 that we hear from him again when he does an EP called the Mark St. John Project. And then in 2003, he releases what will be his final record called Magic Bullet Theory, and it has some of the tracks from the EP on it as well. And this blew me away because I had never heard this before.
Mhm.
I'm not a big fan of guitar solos. I haven't really enjoyed an all guitar record since Steve Vai's Passion and Warfare. I really, really dug the Magic Bullet Theory record. It's got some fantastic playing on it. The songwriting is really, really interesting. It's got acoustic stuff. It's got some kind of funk stuff. It's very heavy. It's got the a mile a minute, noodling and what have you, the Ingve stuff, but it works in the context of an instrumental record. So I highly recommend it. I especially recommend track number one. It's called AWOL. Great song. Great song.
Okay. I have opinions. I listened to the Mark St. John Project EP, and I had very much the same reaction to that as I did the White Tiger album. Again, I don't know how many ways I can say unremarkable, but again, I thought it was forgettable.
Good.
I didn't think it was great. And then yeah, I listened to Magic Bullet Theory as well. Now this is I believe he's referring to Magic Bullet Theory as in the idea that only one bullet killed President Kennedy
Hmm.
during the assassination, and supposedly, it went in a trajectory that was impossible or something. So some people call it the magic bullet theory, which I think they used to dispel the notion that there was only one shooter. At any rate, magic bullet theory does not refer to either the handheld blender to make protein shakes, or a sex toy.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah, yeah.
as far as I know, I don't know. That's just my theory.
Well,
Anyways,
maybe that's
so
how he
yeah,
played so fast.
oh, there you go. Oh shit, you might be onto something. Uh, we're funny.
I'm not on it now. You'd hear it.
So, anyways, yes, I found Magic Bullet Theory. Yeah, it's kind of his attempt at doing one of those instrumental, guitar shredder records. Like you said, something like a Steve Vai record. A lot of times you'll listen to some of these, like a Joe Satriani or a Steve Vai record, and they've got some, they get real progressive. They get a little off, to some weird time signatures, and they get kind of experimental. It that works for Steve Vai. I didn't think it worked for Mark St. John. Like you said, there's actually some interesting songwriting on there. There's some interesting acoustic stuff. There's that one song called like Bourbon Street or something that's
Hmm.
me as much as I love New Orleans, and it started off as kind of like a blues jam. I'm like, oh, this is cool. But then he comes in and shits all over it. And I'm like, this again, this doesn't fit, it doesn't follow. And so I thought again, I it's the same problem that I've had with all of his playing. It just I gotta agree with Uncle Paul on this one that it doesn't have a lot of structure. It doesn't go with anything. There's very little of it that seems to make a whole lot of musical sense, at least to my ears. I hate to say it. We're here to talk about, a former member of Kiss, but well, I guess there's a reason he was a former member.
True, but I can give him some props because shocking revelation number three is that somebody who played with Kiss for a short amount of time can, in fact, release a record of shredding guitar. It can be done.
It
It can
can be
be done.
done. It can be done. Yep.
Yeah, and then things seemed to kind of fall off a cliff for Mark St. John, unfortunately. In 2006, he was incarcerated. He was arrested for drug paraphernalia and trying to destroy the paraphernalia and then resisting arrest. And he was thrown in jail for about a week at Orange County Jail. And Orange County Jail at that time, especially, was notorious for being very, very violent. And there's people there, inmates who were murdered shortly thereafter. And something happened while he was in there. Apparently, it's one of two things. Some people say that he snitched on somebody who was a
Yep.
drug dealer. Some people say that he stole someone's crackers. I
Yeah.
think he's actually told both stories. And the way that they interviewed another inmate specifically about Mark St. John, who said that if you steal something, it's a house matter, which means that everybody gets to take a shot.
Hmm.
And apparently, he was beaten and stabbed with pencils by 20 different people. And when he was released, he just was never quite the same. It was weeks after that he actually passed away, but in that time, he was not able to see a doctor because he didn't have medical insurance. So with that, and there's also reason to believe that drug use factored into his death as well, but a lot of people point to the head injuries that he sustained in prison as being a part of that. And in that time before he went to jail, he was apparently mowing lawns, he was doing, yard work, he was doing roofing, and he sold off almost all of his Kiss stuff. He sold off, the outfits and things like that. But he did keep one thing. He kept the gold record from Animalize, which was hanging up in his garage, which I think is really cool.
Yeah.
And he passed away on April 5th, 2007.
Yeah. So after all that, I don't know. Do you feel like we know Mark St. John any better?
I do. I feel like I know him better. I feel like I know more about his story. I think I know what I want to revisit, what I don't.
Yep.
And it doesn't really change the way I feel about his contributions to the band.
No.
You know, the playing, it's just not a style I really enjoy, to be honest. And Animalize is not a favorite record. And I'm a big Bruce Kulick fan, so
No, but for all of the criticisms that we've leveled at him for some of his other work, I do have to say that Animalize is probably his best work.
mhm.
So at least as Kiss fans, we got the best of him.
And Animalize was a very important record. It went gold within like 2 weeks, and they hadn't done that in a really long time. The
Mhm.
tour was extremely successful, and Mark St. John was in Kiss. That's
Yeah,
not something I'll ever get to say, So
exactly.
so good on you, man.
Yeah. Ah. So I don't know. If he had makeup, what do you think his makeup would have been?
Wow. Let's see. It'd have to be a bumblebee, wouldn't it? Well, keeping with the theme of one and done, this is the one episode we'll probably do about Mark St. John. Thanks for being a part of this one. If you have any thoughts, any opinions, any questions, please do leave a comment. We love the comments. And you can leave those at Spotify. You can leave them on Instagram. You can leave them on YouTube. Pretty much anywhere you want to find us, you'll find us at Rip and Destroy Podcast.
And speaking of one and done again, if you want to order your reprint copy of the one and done Rip and Destroy 1995 fanzine that started this whole debacle, there's a link down below in the description. Follow that link and get yourself a copy of the original Rip and Destroy fanzine reprint, which you know we haven't gotten around to number 2 yet. So I don't know. It might be the Mark St. John of Kiss fanzines.
And that's going to do it for this one. So we'll see you next time.
All right. Is everybody happy? I've had enough.
Kill the power, Phil. Kill the power.